Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, last week was interesting for myself. Certainly, yeah, it was. Certainly didn't believe, talking to the fans here, listening to this podcast, would result in any kind of penalty of any sort. But to my surprise, that happened. So,
So for people who may or may not be listening for this podcast for the first time, last week, NASCAR fined you $50,000 and penalized you 25 points for admitting on your podcast, this podcast, that you intentionally wrecked Ross Chastain on the last lap of the race at Phoenix last Sunday. NASCAR cited you violating Section 4.4 of the Cup Rulebook, which includes actions detrimental to stock car racing.
It's interesting. You quoted what they said. Now, I'll tell you this. The reason I'm appealing is because I don't agree with any of it. And a lot of people are also asking, well, you tweeted initially that you would not appeal to NASCAR, but you would appeal to the people here on this podcast today. And I had all intentions of doing that. How long was the list?
It was long.
Of notes that I had for our podcast today that, it had to be at least 3 episodes worth of talking points,
well,
right?
We had
examples, talking points, all kinds of things that I was very, very angry about. I initially was not going to appeal this because my owner, Joe Gibbs, who I love like family because we are family, called me and says, hey, I know, this is obviously not ideal, but I've talked to sponsors. I talked to the team. We just want to let this go. We just want to move on, and everyone's fine, but let's just not drag it out and move on. And I was like, fine. That it's not what it's not what I like, but I'll do it because Dad's telling me so, and right. I need to be a good teammate and someone that respects when my team owner asks me to do something. So then I slept on it, and I woke up and I looked at I got the email from NASCAR of the things that they said I did, and I called Joe back and said, Joe, I didn't do any of these things. And he says, well, Denny, I don't know. Let me get the team together. Let me get Dave Alpern here and get your crew chief in here and some other executives, and let's talk this out. And he says, okay, tell me what you're feeling. And I says, Joe, I simply feel like the things that they're saying I did not do. I did not do those things. And, when you look at what I'm getting penalized for, these are all untrue. And I know they're untrue because I was there, and I can simply explain to you why I didn't do these things. And so he says, all right, well, let me hear it. And so he put me on speakerphone, and I explained to everyone, exactly, here's what they said I did. This is not truthful. This is not right. And at the end of it, they just said, we understand. If you want to appeal, then we support you. And so here we are. And so, I wish that I could, give my defense here on actions detrimental, but you never want to give the prosecution more time to prepare and hear your defense. My job on this podcast and what I did last week was give the fans listening an inside perspective of what they're hearing here. What did the TV not show? What did they show but maybe not explain? I'm trying to make sure and inform race fans that watch the race on Sunday or are new to the sport and need explanations, layman's terms of things because they want to understand the sport. How many times have we heard people say, it's too damn confusing. I don't understand NASCAR. I'm coming here on Monday to try to help with that. This is helping the sport. We'll move on from that. And Go ahead.
No, I was just going to move on and say we could weigh in on someone else's opinion. We don't have to weigh in on yours on this right now, but
Sure.
we can
Yeah,
weigh
I
in
mean-
on someone else's,
Yep, we can do that. What do you got?
which is Kyle Busch, who was interviewed this weekend. And he had said, this is a long quote, so bear with me. We have completely lost any sense of respect in the garage area between drivers. That's where the problem lies. Nobody gives two expletives, I think he said, about anybody else, and it's just a problem where everybody takes advantage of everybody as much as they can. We're all selfish, granted, but there was an etiquette that did live here. Mark Martin started it. Tony Stewart really lived by it. I think Jeff Gordon lived by it. So, I mean, it did exist. I've tried to talk to guys. They don't listen, so I've lost interest in talking to them.
Fair statement. I can't refute it. Anyone that follows me throughout my career, I feel like I've been one of those guys. And of course, I've had moments where it looks like I don't live by these ethics or rules, but I talk about them often. But it certainly has changed, absolutely, within our sport. And agree with him too that also tried to talk to people, and it's like it just doesn't get through. And so you just feel like you're done talking, right? And so it is a shame. Certainly, I think, I've talked about Kyle Busch. I think he's, one of the fairest people on the racetrack. So I think if you look at how competitive he is and how few of incidents he's been in or started, like he's got a really good ratio. So he's probably somebody that we should listen to in that instance. But I agree with him. It certainly is lost. Things have changed. But I have an opinion why it's changed. It's harder to pass now than ever. And that's a fact.
That's interesting, though, that you're pinpointing that as one of the key reasons for this, right? Because I don't know if we talked about just amongst ourselves, but I feel like the sentiment has always been, it's the younger guys coming up. They don't come up with the same amount of respect, right? But it doesn't sound like that's necessarily the case at all. It's because it's harder to pass. So
that's my opinion. My opinion is there's less give and take because you cannot get that spot back.
Right.
Like back in the day of, let's see here, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Mark Martin, those guys. I remember the first 3 to 5 years of my career, I would let people pass on restarts to save my tires to then blow their doors off after 25 laps of green flag racing. Like it just, you could do it. Passing was just more, it was easier. If your car was significantly better than someone, then you could take it easy at the beginning and then step on their throats in the long run and then just demolish the field. But as tire fall off and lap time variation has changed in our sport, I was going
to say this goes hand in hand with the lengthy aero discussion we had last week.
Yeah, and it's not just aero, it's tires, it's racetracks, it's all those things. Lap time fall off is a half, maybe less than half of what it used to be at all tracks, just because of reduced power. Tires are getting harder, made differently, surfaces, things like that. It just all equals tougher passing. So people don't feel like they can give a spot, get a spot. It used to be we used to say give and take.
Yeah.
Like that shit's long gone, right? But it's just different now because passing is more difficult. Track position's more important than it's ever been. Like it is someone coming back from a speeding penalty or something, like your ass is done. You might get back towards the front, but you ain't winning the race. Like it's not like it used to be in that sense, which I'm the old man talking about, walking in the snow uphill both ways to school right now. But yeah, it's just different. I think that is a factor. And so rightfully so, you have to fight for positioning more than you used to. But is that a bad thing for TV and entertainment? Maybe not. I mean, they want to see us like closer together, fighting with each other over track position. I don't know that NASCAR or TV really wants to see us, the old Mark Martin give and take, pull over to the right, wave them by. Like that's not as entertaining. Now for the purists, they absolutely love it, but that we're in a new age.
Yeah, there's probably a fine balance there between the two that you got to strike. But, I mean, it seems like it's quite difficult to find that, right? To have these good rivalries, but also this, I mean, give and take passing, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. We're all fighting for track position, but I agree. He even mentioned his son, or even in the short track ranks, like they have a black flag, for a reason. Like if they see intentional contact, I talked about it after the clash. All it takes for NASCAR to black flag one person for, going out and, sending somebody in a corner, obviously sending them into a corner and spinning them out on purpose for them to reel back, what we're seeing on the weekends, and maybe it fixes some of this, what Kyle's talking about, but I don't think we're ever going to see it. I mean, I don't want them getting involved in any more balls and strikes calls as it is. So let's just leave that one as it is, and we'll just, fight it out on pit road when we need to.